Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Pia Spadafora, and I will be hosting this reading with Delia de Santis. Please note that this event is being recorded and will be available on social media. We ask you to remain muted during the entire event and to turn off your video to maximize the quality of the recording. Only the reader and host will have video on. To maximize your viewing, click on Speaker View at the top right corner. Benvenuti a tutti. Si noti che questo evento verrà registrato e sarà disponibile sui social media. Si prega di rimanere in modalità silenziosa per tutta la durata dell'evento. In questo momento vi chiediamo di spegnere il vostro video per massimizzare la qualità della registrazione. Solo i lettori e gli host avranno il video attivo. Per massimizzare la visualizzazione cliccate su Speaker View in alto a destra. Grazie.
Thank you, Maria Pia. The introductions and greetings to everyone. The Association of Italian-Canadian Writers is pleased to present the Books and Biscotti literary series celebrating Venera Fazio. But first, I would like to acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together, as treaty people, we have shared the responsibility to act with the respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future of those generations to come. And now just a few words about Venera. After retiring as a social worker, Venera joined the Association of Italian-Canadian Writers, soon taking on several executive roles, including that of president and organizer of national conferences. She was always on to new ideas and never ready to volunteer. Why a poetry contest named for Venera Fazio? There are several reasons I could mention, but the most important one is for us writers is that of her passion for believing in Italian writers. She was a true champion of support and supporter of the young writers and new Italian-Canadian writers. And she felt that someday we would have a rightful place in the realm of Canadian literature if we persisted and worked hard to make it happen. Thus, she went on to co-edit 10 literary anthologies, which featured Italian writers from North America, Italy, and Australia. Two of her highlights during her career were the publication of Sweet Lemons, Writing with a Sicilian Accent in 2004, the first anthology of Sicilian American writing in all of North America, and later that of Exploring Voice, which features the work of 26 Italian-Canadian female writers. Later in life, Venera turned more to her inner self and became inspired to write poetry. Most of her beautiful poems are collected in the book, The Fabric of My Soul. Actually, I don't know if you can see it. That's her book, The Fabric of My Soul. Venera was an unassuming person who will be remembered by many for her knowledge, her wisdom, and her creative talents. She enriched us all with an admirable example of a life well lived. And now, a poetry contest involves the effort of many people, including the judges, who are central to a successful outcome. We wish to extend a heartfelt thanks to the poets Anna Ciardullo Villapiano, Carolyn Van Der Meer, and James Deal, who selflessly donated their time and expertise to read, ponder, discuss, and finally choose our 2021 winners. Now we happily come to the main part of the program, where the winners will share a tribute poem for Venera Fazio, their winning poem, and other poems as time allows. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce to you our honorable mention winner, Ryan Gibbs. Gibbs is an English professor who lives in London, Canada. He is an avid traveler, though for the past 2 years, his poems have traveled farther than he has. They have appeared in journals and anthologies in Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Malta, and Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. His children's poetry has been included in the state of Texas assessment of academic readiness. Welcome.
Thank you. And that's a great explanation, I think, for why I chose this poem, because I think one of the things I shared with Venera was a love of travel. And I think that this poem speaks well to her connections with people and with place from her, from Sicily. So this is the Elixir of Baffia, Sicily. After reading Maria Fama's The Elixir of Pietra Ramita. Each day of my vacation in the village of my birth, I drew elixir from the well in the central square. Cup after cup tasted, pure, cool, light, delectable, delicious, intoxicating, infinitely more satisfying than Canadian tap water, Perrier, Aquafina. My body rejoiced, recognizing the same life essence, shared communion with generations of ancestors. And the second poem I'm going to read, I wrote for Venera. I had planned to meet up with Venera in Sicily one year after taking a tour of Italy. And the dates didn't work out, but we ended up actually meeting in Sardinia instead. And it was a really, it was a great experience to see another part of Italy I wouldn't have seen if it wasn't for Venera. And so I wrote this poem called Via Roma, which is the main street in Sardinia's capital, Cagliari. And it appeared in Mediterranean Poetry last year, and it's called Via Roma for Venera. Where cool Mediterranean waters meet the sultry shores of Cagliari, palm trees sway in a sirocco. Rows of bright pink palazzi stand like elegant flamingos, perched upon their porticos. Here, two Sarnians reunite over glasses of vino bianco, sharing their stories of Sardinia. And the last poem that I'm going to read is the poem that won honorable mention in the poetry contest. And it's a poem that I wrote also for another well-loved Italian-Canadian writer in Sarnia, Carmen Zielkowski. And Carmen, she grew up outside of Naples. She wrote many poems that were inspired by her memories there. And she also wrote a book, and the book was called The House of Four Winds. And that's the title of the poem that I wrote, as I was inspired by the book that I read, especially in the early days of lockdown. The House of Four Winds for Carmen Zielkowski. Fair Matteo on return to La Monaca, suffering his new wife's birth pains, his blood spilt with a sickle in the fields, he searches for a ghost to lift his curse. Dark Camille atop her white palomino, her green dress with the flounce of décolletage, sudden fear of her newborn killing her, her mind bolts from pregnancy. Scarlet Rosita bitten by an asp, remorse for dove's blood as a wedding stain. Nuns dance in the house, devils dance in the garden. She dances tarantellas all alone. White old man master of the convent, specter to the villagers wandering at night. He confesses his sins as the cuckoo calls, prophesizes new peace until a new war. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. That was beautiful. It brings back all of your poetry brings back memories to me. And
Thank you.
just so gentle. And now I'll welcome our third place winner, Silvia Falsaperla. Silvia Falsaperla has published poems and short stories in anthologies and literary magazines. She is a past winner of the Accenti Writing Contest. She has completed a poetry manuscript and a hybrid collection entitled Sicily Poems and Short Stories. Currently, she is working on another collection of poetry and a book of short. Come, Silvia.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I met Venera towards the end of her life. Unfortunately, I never developed a full friendship with her, but I'm grateful anyways to have gotten to know her a little bit. Delia, Venera, her husband Dwayne, and I took a car ride from Padula to Sicily. We crossed the Strait of Messina together. So I will always remember that. Now, the poem that I've chosen to read from her collection is called Venera. Just a moment, please. Now, I asked Delia a few weeks ago what were Venera's favorite poems in her collection. And Delia answered there were two, and I've chosen to read one of the two, and it's called Venera. Venera, alien to English tongues, is embroidered upon Sicilian history where pagan civilizations merged. Rooted in the Phoenician deity Astarte, goddess of erotic love, queen of the celestial spirits, she claimed the stars. Renamed Aphrodite, then Venus, protector of sailors, mother of Virgil's Aeneas. Venera, the name of a Christian maiden, martyred near my ancestral village. Generations heard her legend woven into family fabric, preserved by paternal grandmother. At the Norman Castello of Venere, on Sicilian cliffs of Erice, place of world peace, once the flyway of sacred doves over the cobalt Mediterranean to Tunisian temple Sicca Veneria, I hear the Sirocco sing my name. Now, the second poem that I'm going to read is a poem inspired by Venera. It was published a few issues ago of the Italian-Canadian Writers Newsletter. And it's called Euterpe. Now, Euterpe is one of the 9 muses in Greek mythology. She is the muse of lyric poetry. And here it goes. Euterpe. Who will mend our verses now that she has gone deep into the woods? How formless and mute how they lie formless and mute under blankets of white paper frozen in screen. How they wait for Euterpe's 2 flutes, her keen hand, her keen ear, to make our words and prosody right from untempered, fearful, unclear. She came from another country with lemon-scented hair. True to her calling, always obliging, we listened with a stylus between fingers, tapping the keys, lyrical. She is still deep in the woods, merging with the river, her lessons smooth to commit to memory, her tunes scatter and ripple. And now I will read my poem, The Colossus. The Colossus. It'll be Halloween in a fortnight. The neighborhood streets are decked out in horror. Ghouls waiting in the trees for the night of the dead. A colossal inflatable float of a vampire hangs from a top window of a house, his red twisted hands splayed out scary-like with spiky nails, like the spiky maze of the new invisible fiend called Goon. On the door below hangs a skeleton in a white tulle veil, like a bride grinning, as if snickering. Open the door, welcome home, my darlings. Zoom in. Zoom out. Life is now on Zoom platform. Zoom, I stay tuned. I shut my door and stay inside, out for only essential food and sunshine. But I stumble into a parade of motley dudes on the best street of Gotham town, honking the horns of their Jeeps, pickup trucks, and SUVs, thumping their feet on the ground, unfurling the leaf and the stars and stripes. There are no vampires, no Godzillas, you gullibles. They honk, trumped up, trumping, honky tonk. We are the unmasked, the deplorables. QAnon, make freedom great again, their placards holler. I walk away from the madding crowd. I avoid the street of the vampire and the skeleton bride. A squirrel on a fence post nibbling on a morsel held in its exquisite hands catches my eye, minding its own species business, a blessed natural obliviousness that drowned the noise of the crowd. And that is all, my friends. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Silvia. That was beautiful, beautiful reading and beautiful poetry. Really enjoyed it. And now over to Maria Pia for a short break and announcement. Yes. Thank you.
A very short break, some announcement. Quickly share up a write on Wednesday from 10 to 1 o'clock. All are welcome to join a community of writers hosted by Emma Pivato and Joseph Pivato. The third year of Venera Fazio Poetry Contest is up. Deadline is on April 30. To find out more, visit AICW.ca and rules are right there on the homepage. Quattro chiacchiere in italiano, a chance to speak Italian with native speakers, hosted by Maria Pia Spadafora, me, and Rosaria Moretti Lori. We'll soon come back. Stay tuned. We now come to our second place winner, Josie Di Sciascio-Andrews. Welcome, Josie. Josie Di Sciascio-Andrews is a teacher, a poet, and an author. She has written several collections of poetry, the latest being Metastasis, Mosaic Press, 2021. Her poetry has been translated into Italian, Spanish, Chinese, and Farsi. Josie teaches for Poetry in Voice and is a member of the League of Canadian Poets, the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, the Lincolnian Club for Women in the Literary Arts, and the Ontario Poetry Society. She is the host and coordinator of the Oakville Literary Cafe series. Josie, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much to the Association of Italian Canadian Writers for having this wonderful reading today. I met Venera only online. I never actually met her in person, but just through our online communication, she was a wonderfully kind and amiable and just a wonderful person to work with. I also saw her name on all the anthologies when I was doing my master's degree in Italian literature at U of T. So I did meet her through the books that she helped to edit. I do not have a book by Venera Fazio, so I am just going to read a poem from my collection, A Jar of Fireflies, Mosaic Press, that is entitled Inspired by Ovid's Metamorphoses. And it is about the fact that even though Venera is no longer with us, but she is with us in spirit because we transform when we pass over. And I really do believe that. One wave, one gust of wind. Again, love, you emerge out of a dream through the invisible glass of air. Conceal your form in trees, the intricate landscape of leaves and clouds, a sparrow's form camouflaged in feathered warm blood, tethering its tiny movements to the earth. Again, a winter sky transfixes its blue gaze upon my hair, bare branches netted up against memory. The faded pearl of sun brushing evanescence against the salt-parched roads and frozen January grasses, scourged by unrelenting winds. Defiant hearts colliding everywhere like air fronts. My second poem is from my new collection, Metastasis, also by Mosaic Press, which deals with the loss of my own mom from cancer, but also with social corruption. But in this situation, I know that Venera did die from this horrible illness as well. And this is a poem about that, about how horrible it was to know that these cells were inside my mom, just taking her away from us. Now, this particular cell suddenly turns barbarous, turns against you, defective, it replicates in error. No more idols but me, it states. You have reached the outermost limits of your time. She refuses apoptosis, leaves that option up to you. The crab takes root, unlocks the combination of your marrow's code, splays out at will. Your future stalled now, vertical, corrosive egg, queen of tentacles, black-haired Medusa growing fat with her paraphernalia of doom. And there is a little bit of anger in some of these poems because, as I say, it is such a horrible illness. And the last poem, I was very happy to have two poems in the anthology Musings by the Heliconian Club for Women in the Literary Arts. And this is sort of about me dealing with losing so many people lately in my life, not only in my family as friends like Venera, but also in people that we all know. Into the Mist. I remember hearing it before seeing it, feeling in the heart its cosmic hum, pulse of blood rushing to the temples, heavy roller coastering roar of current, its turquoise jade body inescapably ceding to gravity's ominous pull. It was the high tide inside oneself, immensity's perpetual aortic leap into the drop of the abyss. As I look at those erasures of us in those faded Polaroids and Kodaks, only now I realize that we too, amidst those endless crowds of tourists, were no more than drops of water falling, H2O particles, spritz from life's colossal flow. River of consciousness eternally brimming, cascading over the escarpment or the universe. Niagara Falls was our refuge from tedium. So many times we drove down to it from sweltering Sunday afternoons for a change in atmosphere. How wondrous when visitors came from overseas yearning to see the honeymoon capital of the world. Gladly, we drove them through the highways to Wine Country, Clifton Hill, and Lundy's Lane. We sat and picnicked on the grass where multitudes had stood before. They say that the sun was out when Annie Edson survived her barrel trip over God's water slide, They say her agents had wolfish eyes, just tried to make a buck out of her skill. But they too are gone now. I saw postcards of her story and her name is in all the gift shops. The world's sightseers are all here taking photos and buying souvenirs. Soon they will drive off to be replaced tomorrow and tomorrow after that by new faces in search of wonder. Each one repeating, sparkling, falling on the radiant arched green of time's precipice. Invisible life force calling all of our names. Almighty river, my heart is in your hands. Thank you so much for listening to my poems. And thank you, Maria Pia.
Thanks, Josie, for writing and sharing these brilliant pieces. Our final reading is by our first place winner, Giovanna Riccio. Welcome, Giovanna. Giovanna Riccio is a poet, teacher, and independent scholar. She is the author of Vittorio Lyrical Miracle Press, 2010, Strong Bread, 4 books, 2011, and Plastics Republic, Garlic Editions, 2019. Her poems and other writings have appeared in national and international publications and in numerous anthologies. Translation of her work have been published in 6 languages. Over to you, Giovanna.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thanks to this wonderful audience for attending today. Great to see you all. And to the AICW for hosting us and for hosting this contest as well. And the judges who did donate their time. And I'm glad that we're taking this opportunity to honor Venera. I have fond memories of Venera. She's a very fine editor. That's what I learned from working with her. And I remember being with her at Word on the Street. And I have lovely pictures of her and I laughing our heads off about something. She interviewed me and then we did a reading together. And the poem I have chosen, I'll just say, going through her collection, what really strikes me about Venera is that she is able to be very intimate in these poems and to love and honor. And at the same time, she does not romanticize or minimize the harshness and sometimes violence of the Italian extended family. I admire her for that. And we remember her here. And the poem I have chosen to read is called Legacy. My mother cherished embroidered linens more than fine china, crystal, or university degrees. In Sicily, from the age of 5, her mother yoked her to family responsibilities, harvesting Merlot grapes, reaping winter olives and citrus, wrenching weeds through sun-baked soil, made her care for younger siblings when she yearned to perfect lazy daisies to impress a future mother-in-law. My mother wanted a daughter to ribbon, stem, and satin stitch rather than me, my tangled French knots, inept fingers caressing books. And I am now going to read my poem because only this poem because it is a long poem. And it takes about 7 minutes to read, and I hope you'll bear with me. It is called The Archivist, and it's an homage to my father. It's not as long as Vittorio, which I also wrote for him, which is 28 pages. This is a mere 3.5. So this is called The Archivist because it's the story of me going through my father's papers and finally getting them accepted for the archives at the Fisher Rare Book Library at U of T. And here it goes. 1. My birthright, that schoolboy's pebbled leather satchel carted from Calabria's parched paradise. companion to the weighty desktop encyclopedia, 2 volumes flaunting the Italian you courted with a chevalier's ink, pages doubly bound by a cavalier's lust for wisdom and verse, your pen biding beauty's brio. Did that pliant vault soften the rough Atlantic by harboring sea and earth? A twirl of hair, your mother's picture, a Mediterranean shell? Or did it lay destitute, an expectant void fertile with future, to shelter, say, the antics and annals of no-account players, unschooled scholars foiling each day's scatter in a swirl of dreamless sleep? You, an autodidact scribe logging lofty nitty-gritty rhythms, an archivist piecing lives, gathering pages, images, musings against forgetting ourselves, fleeting as ephemera fading, the blank life threatening. Your voice set against erasure like a piazza composing public memory. Unthinkable to overcome without a word poverty's rubble, a tongue-tied exile, the rupture of family and familiars. So before the time cards whistle, with the light, rise from ruins, veto silence by marking unremarked characters. With no home, no wife and kids, no money, you pulled into Toronto, gravitated to a communized Victorian in Little Italy, 5 fellow loners, your roommates. At night again, you roused a pen flush with oceanic currents, spewed satirical rhyme against echoing migrant woes, the bum rap brutality, hostile Hogtown Anglos heaped on dirty, hot-blooded wops, or pickpocket priests preaching dollars over prayer as proper love of God, tagging you, the devil's twin, for acerbic songs limned in cobalt lines, wailing in that satchel sanctuary. Peasant wit, a grave chronicler, waxing to populist poet, witness to the overlooked moment. Back home, you glossed an imaginary figure, fragmented in airmail letters spilling poignant mea culpas for meager funds dispatched, and mother weeping blue tears in epistles, wringing work-hardened hands, lest love be disfigured in a vast sky where time's fault cracks bonds, so hunger and thirst no longer remember vows that bind night to day, summing to half a decade to reunion at Union Station. All the while recording, animating space with glaring photographs depicting a black and white city of men missing women, clippings from giornali and newspapers, missives from intellectual cronies to Il Giornale di Toronto, homesick magazines pushing glamour push celebs, cryptic columns from the Globe and Telegram. So much ideological posturing, political double talk and mirth, an elect obvious and oblique suspended in that immigrant treasury, the past passed on, becoming. 2. You kissed a toddler goodbye, we touched again as strangers. Shaped by your passions and persona, I contoured into a mirror, prizing books, stage, and poets. Afloat in the 60s, my rebel girl favored brandy and smokes, chasing a freedom that eluded you. Only 25, raging tears on that good night, a burst aorta blitzed your heart. I refuged in the bathroom, sipped whiskey, toasted Dylan Thomas. Your paper remains abide as my inheritance, a death transcending recollection, crafting a man unreadable beyond the workday, barbershop, and prosaic papa. An Ars Vitae time capsuled in crumbling skin. For decades, I cart, guard, closet that satchel, avoid trespassing upon a stashed away bio. Now, at an age when saving promises no end other than itself, over a private telling, I crave an opening, the found moment where ephemera evolves to history. To rouse a life bigger than a daughter's lens or genealogical myth, my dig flounders as I unravel yellowed years, haloed ink blurred by neglect. I strain to decode Italianate script and shifting form, to enter a writ, become my second tongue, and revel in your philosophic drift. Musing on wounded jottings and smart-ass aphorisms, wistful for your knowing smile and soulful spunk. Eloquent clocks reverse to banquet halls. Again, I witness you speechifying, marrying rhetoric and lyric at festive nuptials, or brains and book learning to endorse a politico paisano, vying for votes, reaching to unlock the ethnic paddock. Then on to clashing missives when I blew Toronto to get back to the land, the very life you'd evacuated, and set my hippie soul free in Nota Bene, New Brunswick. Verbal fisticuffs we threw across generations, muscular, laced with bloody love. So as I write, my heart sounds longing, longing to lean into your warmth. To woo the chief archivist at the Fisher Rare Book Library, like a tutored orator and done good poet, I piece your story between cerulean covers, a go-between, shuttling voices, faces, crossings, and landings. With unalloyed hope, I unscroll your artful artifact, the bittersweet, sweat-soaked diary of two interconnected, disconnected countries. Yes, paper binds beginning to end, sealed by final words penned on that farewell morn. The salutation, your arabesque signature, a lettered last kiss, archived, winging off the page into illuminated finding. Thank you.
Thanks, Giovanna, for sharing Venera Fazio's piece Legacy and for writing this well-constructed poem, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Over to you, Delia.
Okay. This ends the reading portion of our celebration of Venera Fazio and our accomplished winners. We thank Maria Pia Spadafora for her technical support and co-hosting. We would like to thank Giovanna Riccio and Silvia Falsaperla for their valuable talents in organizing this reading. And we recognize the League of Canadian Poets for making Giovanna Riccio's and Josie Di Sciascio-Andrews reading possible. This free event on Zoom is brought to you by the Association of Italian Canadian Writers, a nonprofit organization run by a group of volunteers. We welcome donations at any time. Go to AICW.ca to donate and to find out more about our activities. And now we have a special guest who would like to say a few words. Dwayne O'Neill, sponsor of the Venera Fazio Poetry Contest. Welcome, Dwayne.
Thank you, Delia, and thank you everyone who's organized this annual contest, especially this year. And I'd also like to thank the judges, and I know that it's a significant effort to pull this together and to offer it. And a special congratulations to the four winners, Giovanni, Josie, Silvia, and Ryan. Venera was a poet and writer, but she enjoyed the opportunity to help in in the works of established writers and poets, and for them to get published, and in promoting Italian Canadian literature. But one of Venera's real passions was to provide an opportunity to encourage the newer writers and poets, and to provide constructive feedback. I know that Delia was an excellent editor, and the two of them, and to provide opportunities for them to get published. And Venera passed away just a little over 4 years ago, but she would have been very pleased that her passion for writing and poetry continues today. So thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you. That's very special. I thought you were going to break down, and you're making me break down. Okay. Thank you, Dwayne, for your generosity in supporting the contest and sponsoring it, and also for taking part in this special event, remembering Venera.